Yeah, I
How do
can
we
just
want to proceed with this? I mean, do we want to just
go through and I can...
peruse them or walk through them
I think I
item
could
by item?
I could walk you through this, which would probably be helpful.
Is that the committee's? All right, let's go that way.
Okay, so the first page, this is just historic proposals that we got, FY20 eligible historical proposals. And these are the ones that I have been notified that they're eligible for historical. We don't have to go in, maybe I don't have to go into too much detail on each one, since you can read it on your own, but do you want me to just read what they are as I go through, Kip?
I'm sorry.
Would you like me to just read what they are as I go through without going into great detail?
Yeah,
Just,
I think,
okay.
just
for the record.
the name and the dollar
Yeah.
amount and.
Okay. I don't know the dollar amount for everybody, but I tried to get as much as I could as an estimate, because that wasn't on the eligibility application. But the first one is from Jude Stull of Arrow Properties. He's a real estate broker, and this is for what he calls the PRU, 274-276 High Street, which is that building that you can see actually from my office that's right next to the annex. Yeah, it's the tall building. Let's see. He is sort of unsure about what he's going to be applying for, but he wanted to apply for facade work as well as asbestos and lead abatement. So I had to ask Stuart Saganor about that, because one of the things that's unknown is, since he's representing the owner and going to be selling this building, we don't really know what the use of the building will be. So to do abatement like that, it's not sure, we don't know if the public will be using the interior of the building. So I kind of encouraged him to focus on the facade. And then Stuart said it is allowable, the other abatements, but we might want to say, as I've noted here, that this if awarded, it would be contingent upon information on the future use of the building, as well as a preservation restriction placed on it. He thinks he might be asking for $225,000.
Okay.
And the next one is Robert Parent, DPW. This is pretty straightforward. The Holyoke stained glass windows restoration. And you can ignore, because we already discussed what I have there where I said not using FY19 funding retroactively. You should probably cross that out because it'll just confuse you. He's going to be asking for 150, and you can cross out the idea of it being an emergency. So this is a new eligibility application. He thinks about 150 to 250,000 is the amount he'll be asking for. And then Mike Falcetti, the War Memorial Commission for the restoration of Lady Liberty at Veterans Park. Mike, you estimated about 25,000 for that study. That's a study, by the way.
Study only.
Yeah, study only. So actually, you should put study under proposed work instead of historic. It's probably clearer if you write study in that column under proposed work. And then we got from Maureen Costello, Friends of the Holyoke Merry-Go-Round Incorporated, the Holyoke Merry-Go-Round restoration of the horses. They estimate 30,000 for the carousel horses, 4 carousel horses. And then, of course, as we expected, MIFA Victory Theater is put in an eligibility application for 100,000. And I think that they specified mural restoration for this one, and maybe one other item, which I could look up. We got one from Wisteria Hearst, Kate Preisler. This is for, they've now come back with more information, because remember, they didn't apply last year because they wanted to get more information, and they have sort of done a study and found that they want to do a full electrical repair of the music room and the museum, to update it electrically.
Amy, if I may ask, excuse me for interrupting.
Sure.
I read it, there's nothing really specific in what you sent us. It just says, yeah. Did they tell you we're going to do this on the first stage, that on the second stage, that on the third stage?
Well, this is just the eligibility application. They don't have to put all that information. It's just that two-page thing.
Okay.
But
all right. No, that's okay. No problem.
Okay, I could look up
No,
what I
Amy,
have.
that's
Oh,
okay.
that's-
No
Okay.
problem.
All right, they were pretty specific. And then from Marco Morera, the Holyoke Armory restoration, it's the exact same, pretty much the exact same eligibility one they submitted last year to do with an RFP to get. But I don't know how much. I asked him for how much, but I haven't heard back about what the estimate. I imagine it might be about $150K like they originally asked for. Let's see, and then on the back, these are the ones that are either ineligible or could be potentially allowable as emergency applications, and I'll explain why. The first one is from David White of Ray Street Properties for the Richardson train station at 12 Bowers Street, as we talked about last year. He submitted his eligibility application 1 day late.
Who did?
David White of the
Richardson train station.
for the Richardson train station, even though I saw the email and it clearly, actually he emailed Ben Murphy at planning and he clearly said it's due today, but he submitted it a day late. So at first I told him it was ineligible, but I was also thinking, well, I should let him know that if it's an emergency, maybe, I wanted to leave that up to you. So I had a phone call with him today, as I noted here, where he said the building is not going to fall down if they don't get funding, but if they could get funding before winter, they could shore it up to prevent future damage, which would keep their costs down. So it seems like he's more, concerned about the cost. So I don't know. That doesn't really seem quite like an emergency situation.
Well, if they need it before winter, it is.
Well, what he's saying is they'll be able to, they're definitely, what did you want to say? Sorry.
No, I think, I don't know, if things are gonna, if the damage over the winter is gonna end up being more than $100,000 worth of damage, it might be emergency. It depends on how much damage he might be facing for the winter, but again, that wouldn't be for us to.
Amy, the applicant seems different than I'm remembering. I thought the train station was owned by HG&E.
Okay, sorry, I didn't explain that. They
It now
sold
looks
it.
like
They're
the
actually,
purchase
they
and sale is
haven't,
pending.
sorry, they haven't yet bought it, and I'm glad you raised that. I forgot to mention that. This Thursday, they expect to close on it, and they said HG&E was dragging their heels on that. So yeah, it's not even, they don't yet own it. So that's why I'm leaving it up to you to instruct me on how you think I should approach that, whether I should tell him that he's eligible or not.
Is the function for this evening is for us to confirm or deny applications for the eligibility criteria? Is that what
I
tonight's
think for the
meeting?
ones that are like this, that are thrown into question,
You
that's
wanna
what
vote
I'm
on it?
asking for. Because the ones that seem straightforward, as I discussed with Kip, I went ahead and notified them that they were eligible. But the ones that are, I'm not sure about, need to go to you.
So
as the committee.
this evening, you're seeking
Yes.
a vote on, for example, this first one about the train station. You're seeking a vote this
Yeah,
evening
I'm not
to say
sure.
whether
It's up to Kip whether it would be a vote or just more informal. I don't know what your
advise
decision
pretty
will be.
much, how to move forward.
Well, I mean, I would support the idea of taking a vote, polling, what the committee members think. And, I think it's important to keep in mind that, this is an eligibility vote. Doesn't mean they get any money, right? And I read between the lines on this. They're purchasing
Right.
the train station, whether or not they're eligible
Exactly.
for CPA funding
Yes,
or not.
and they know that they are going to have to fund this with much more money than what they'd be asking
And-
for.
Not saying that it's not a worthy project
Mm-hmm.
for CPA funding if it got to that round,
Right.
but
Just haven't
I mean,
closed on it.
if the reason that the question is that their application was 1 day late,
Mm-hmm.
or that or whether they can apply, whether they own it or not. We're looking at the project is eligible, I guess, whether
Well,
there's.
Yeah, the eligibility form does say, are you the owner, and if not, attach documentation. So of course, they haven't been able to do that yet, because it isn't sold yet. Yeah.
I suppose they could have attached the purchase and sale agreement, even though they don't own it yet. and
Yeah, I
so-
don't think they even had that yet. Yeah, at
So-
that point.
Mr. Chairman, do you want us to take a vote or just?
Yeah, or
Let it fly.
further discussion if people, how they feel about, because honestly, I'm not sure how I feel right now about it.
They don't
Well,
own it yet.
we definitely need more information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
So I would,
So we
I would
could-
just tell them to stay in touch with us.
What more information do you need, though? Because they need to know whether they get the
First,
green light to apply.
they own it?
Or not. Well, they don't own it yet, but they think
But
they will own it on
As
Thursday.
it goes forward,
Okay.
if they get ownership of it, then they should come before us and talk about their project.
Right, but I just need to, all right, so are you saying
So
that
keep it open.
if on Thursday they own it, then I can say to them, yes, you are eligible to apply for the full application?
they
Because
can-
that's the information.
I would think they could
need to know.
apply. And then we can yay or nay it after that, but I think that, I guess they could move forward, but then maybe that's a vote for us to say, can they move forward? If everything falls into line.
I mean, the funding is, the project is things that we would cover. We can cover this with, if it's restoration.
eligible?
To keep it
Right.
from water damage, that's part of our purview. So
Right.
we
Whether,
obviously-
whether,
Yeah.
whether we will vote, part of this is
So
a
it's-
courtesy to them, right? We're telling, they're gonna spend some time and effort putting together an
probably
application.
fix the stuff
And
anyways
they're
if they don't
asking,
get
is this project eligible for funding? I don't wanna put together an application if it's not eligible for funding. So they're asking,
our purview.
we're telling them, it's our opinion that it's eligible. If 3 months from now, when we're reviewing and discussing what projects to fund, they haven't documented to us that they own it, I can't imagine we're going to vote to fund it. So it seems like it shouldn't be a real big barrier as long they understand. I mean, the work itself, right, is eligible.
Well, yes.
Restoration of,
Right, but the criteria for eligibility is having ownership. That's one of the questions. So what we could say is if you can
contingent.
prove that you own this,
Can you
but maybe
provide
give them a deadline? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the
Or just
deadline's
say,
going to be,
they
we're going
said
to
by
be voting
Thursday.
on these things some point in the future, and if they haven't
What is the
provided us with the
deadline? We just make it
documentation, we're not.
No, I mean, yeah, it's just that I also want to make it consistent for all applicants,
I agree
right?
with that, being
Like-
consistent for everyone across the board. But to make it easier is either yes or no. Are they ready? Do they have everything do they need right now for the date of application?
No,
If
they don't.
Then no.
They don't.
But
I mean,
October-
just because we're going back and forth, right? And we're going in circles
Yes.
over the argument, right? At the end of the day, to make it easier, everyone else came to the table prepared.
Right, but
So,
I agree.
so is the final application November 30th?
She was saying.
no, October something, isn't it?
Or-
October.
November 15th, but actually I'm glad you
November
brought that up
15th.
because we might want to extend that, especially because some people I haven't been able to notify yet about
They have
eligibility.
So
till
I-
November 15th.
What were you
So you
gonna say?
have
So they have till
until,
November
Oh, so if they got till November
Yeah.
15th, so they still got
if they
time.
can,
Whatever
if
the
they can
date
get
is.
it together.
But that's not really how the eligibility application is designed. It's designed to let applicants know, are you eligible right now to go on to the next stage?
And they're not.
So, but the reason I brought it before you is because I know that this could be an emergency situation.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they can show us ownership by November 15th, then we'll decide if they're
Would
eligible
have
or
to,
not.
but
But
we
you're
would
violating
have
the,
to.
I agree with you, but
Yeah.
you're stretching the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're
stretching the
changing the
rules.
rules.
Right, we would have to say, yes, you qualify for emergency, whatever it is that we were saying, right? And then by then,
Yeah,
if you
we-
don't have it by November 15th, then you're all done.
So
Right.
if,
But we have to
Exactly.
make the decision now to say, do they qualify for the emergency
Well,
thing?
today, right
Well,
at
they're
this
not-
day, they're not. They're not.
No, they
I mean,
don't own
nobody's,
it.
they're not. Okay, so there's two questions here, right? One is, are they eligible? And then secondly,
Yes
and that's a
no.
yes or no.
Yes and
if
no.
you sit there
Yes
today,
and no.
if you sit here today and ask that question,
eligible today?
are they eligible? If you review our documents and the form which say prove you own this thing as part of the eligibility, then
Today
they
they're not.
don't seem to meet
Exactly.
that criteria. However, I want to point out that we had these other applications in the past where Marcos Marrero had these trying to create an incentive, apply for the money so that, but at that point, HRA or some other city entity was the owner. They were able to fill in the application, said they're owner. Even if they might transfer it to somebody else in the future as an incentive to develop the project. Am I making sense what I'm
Those
saying?
were always eligible, but the issue was that there can't be a developer fund. And so they had to change the language in their
Right,
final
no, I understand
application.
that.
Yeah.
But
So-
just focusing on the ownership issue. So if the applicant here had been HG&E,
Right.
But HG&E signed a letter saying that they were a co-applicant with that, so that was a different
on
situation.
this one,
No, on the,
talking about
on
this
Then
one.
maybe
the,
that's what
I'm
they should
talking
do
about the
here.
developer incentive.
no, on this one right now,
If they
right?
would have signed the paperwork.
Right.
HG&E had applied as the owner, it would be eligible, even if their plan was
Right, and they didn't do
going
that.
to step in,
Well, they
but
should
they
be a
didn't do that.
co-applicant
Right.
then. They
Or
should.
maybe they can
Or-
write a letter.
Or they can have a notarized letter
So-
stating that they're gonna have.
They don't
ownership.
own the free, they don't own it.
But yeah, they
Simple
don't.
as that. They don't own it.
That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier. Like
They don't
we're,
own it.
we're going in circles, extra time. Like the
I
easiest.
mean, I
decision
think,
is that.
look, I think
So they can
philosophically,
apply
we
when
want to
they
be as flexible as we can with
Right.
people.
It's too late.
However, there's certain
So next-
fundamental components of the application.
This is, yeah.
So, but it's the
Okay.
committee's will, like what,
What you just said is contradictory to what you then said after.
I'm sorry?
He said philosophically, we should meet people where they're at if the work is meaningful, but also maybe there's check marks we have to check.
Well, this is the conflict that we have. This is what we're discussing
I would
right
just
now.
err on the
So
side
here's
of
the
the
thing.
first one. I think if it's good work and it needs to get done, they're a day late. They're in the middle of transferring a property. Sounds like they've got a
Here's
lot
the-
going on.
Here's the thing, they're too late to apply for the eligibility, but they can apply to us for emergency. and
emergency.
That's
what
right.
you need to tell them.
There you go.
That's how you would do it.
I mean, I think that's
makes
a very valid
That's a good one.
position to take.
Right.
That's a good one.
It's probably worth a vote to make a,
We want to still, we,
You know-
we don't want to extend the rules, but we want to still let them get the ability to get in, right?
Right.
so it's simple though, is
How do
we
we
could
word it?
either tell them yes, no, or contingency yes if you provide us with this information. What's the will of the committee, you know?
I think you said it right.
Yes, you do. I mean,
Oh, well, we'll make
I think we should,
a motion and
I
we'll
would
vote
rather
on
us
it.
tell them that they can be reviewed for eligibility on the, the day after the transfer of the sale.
Okay.
we
But,
don't
but
have
that's
to-
outside the application cycle unless it's on as an emergency.
Well, it's not really,
This-
they have till November 15th.
Well, I agree
submit
with
the
Elaine
final
about the
application.
emergency, and here's why, because we haven't even heard some of the others that I've already told were ineligible, because I did give them a little window of time to do things, and they weren't able to do it in that time. So I don't want other applicants saying, why did you do that for them, and you know what I mean? So that's the issue.
And, you know, I would,
consistency's sake, too.
I would, if they had been one, if the only issue with this application is they were 1 day late, you know, people's cars break down, things, I'd be like, okay, for that,
Yeah, that's not really a big
reasonable-
deal. I would have given them more time, but they didn't, but they didn't,
But
they
there's
still
two
don't have the
boxes
purchase
that, I
and
mean, they
sale.
missed that,
Yeah.
meh. But they still couldn't submit a complete application today. This is how far after the close of the application period, where they could not say that they were the owner, no.
Right, and there was no letter from HG&E
Okay,
or anything,
I mean,
so.
Yeah.
there's,
I vote no. Mr. Chairman, if I
well, I
may.
mean, someone's
Well,
gotta make a
let's-
motion
yeah.
and a second, and we'll.
Let's make a motion that we're going to deny the eligibility application for this project, but that we are open to them being able to apply to us for emergency. Not saying that they're going to get it, because I don't know what they want to do if it, but they're eligible to apply to us for an emergency.
Everybody's eligible to
Everyone
apply
is.
for an
Right.
emergency application. They're not excluded from doing that.
Right.
So we have a
So that's the motion.
simple or,
You might just want to have an up-down vote on eligibility.
so we make a motion and
Go ahead.
Yeah,
second
you
it.
can make a motion,
You can
Megan.
make a second motion under my motion, and then we'll deal with yours first.
So I submit a motion to consider the eligibility of the Richardson train station project.
That you want people to accept the eligibility, the committee
Would they
members.
accept that, their ability to
Okay, so.
give us additional documentation once it's available, once the purchase and sale goes through?
Okay, so then you have to deal with her motion first.
Well, there's a second to that?
If, yes, ask for a second.
Wait, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so the question on the floor is, are we interested in to accept this eligibility? All right, any discussion on that?
Well, no, Mr. Chairman, I vote no.
Okay,
because-
well,
No.
we'll get our chances. All right, so let's vote. No further discussion.
I just have a question for Amy. So did they indicate that they have a closing on Thursday?
That's what they said, but they told me that up until this point, HG&E has been dragging their heels. So
Okay.
you know how things can change, but
Yep.
that's what he said today.
Okay.
Yeah, my closing date for my house is tomorrow. We're not
Yeah,
closing
yeah, yeah.
tomorrow.
Darn.
All right, so all those in favor?
Raise your hand.
Eligibility?
Yeah, eligibility.
Sort of confused a little, but I'll raise my hand for
If
now.
you're in favor of eligibility
All
for
those,
this, I think you
all
were
those
saying-
opposed?
So then, no, right, opposed. Yeah.
Okay, that's,
So just because,
Okay, so
now
you
we're
vote-
back to your order.
Yes.
And
Wait, so what was the result of the?
It
what
was
we just-
3 in favor and 4 against.
Oh, so it was, okay.
I'm not sure which way to go.
two,
Doesn't matter, we lost.
all right,
We're
so,
going on to the next
so,
one.
and so can you restate what your,
Yes, that we're going to deny their eligibility application, but that we are open to them for applying to us for emergency funding.
all right, any
If they
discussion
meet the
on it?
criteria, if they own the building.
Well,
Right,
Yeah,
we'll worry about that when they apply
Right.
for the emergency
Right.
funding. We don't have to worry about
Okay.
that now.
all right, any other further discussion on?
Second, you need a second.
Oh, we need well, I thought we had a second already.
that was for the
Not
other
for
one.
mine.
Oh,
that was for the other.
Yeah.
I thought you just stayed. Okay, so we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think opening up the, like extending eligibility to one person just is a bad precedent.
Well,
They already, that was denied.
Yeah.
so,
This is just for emergency.
Everybody gets
Yeah.
Okay, but I thought.
Where
that
I'm
was the
saying
first-
we're going
We're
to
den-
deny their
Yeah,
eligibility
I think that's
application.
That seems like
Yeah.
the
Okay.
right way to go.
I
Like,
agree.
all in favor of denying eligibility to David White and the Richardson train station? All in favor of denying eligibility?
But that was already voted on, it's
Yeah, we voted
for,
on that,
against.
No, we
it's-
didn't.
Oh, I thought
Yeah,
you
we
did.
did.
Well, no, you're
What was the first?
Did not accept.
not.
Yeah, what was the,
She-
Meg, what was the first one?
Meg said to accept it.
Yeah,
She said to,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we
I
already
thought it
denied
was
it.
for or against.
no, we didn't deny
No.
it. We
So
denied
no, yeah.
accepting it. So now we have to make
Yeah.
formal,
So, right.
It's simple. We're here.
yeah.
Well, all we got to do is say yay or nay. So all those in favor of denying eligibility to David White? All right. All opposed? None.
Except for one.
Yeah, Megan.
Oh, did you? Sorry. I thought. All right.
Well, that was easy.
So is that clear to you? We're
Okay.
denying their application for eligibility and communicating to them, of course, like all other applicants, they are more than welcome to submit a emergency application for funding.
Okay,
Once they own the building.
Well, yes, that's
But
part
she
of,
can communicate
yeah, I mean, it
okay.
likely would have been approved if they
if they own the building.
met the criteria of owning the building.
Yeah.
Was there any other ones before that we
Yes,
discussed? That
there was.
What?
John Tansey last year, you guys,
Right, that was an issue. He knew.
because he didn't own the building.
Right.
On this one?
No, last year,
Oh,
Maple
last
Street.
year, no,
yeah.
I mean.
So I
page-
think we should stick
page
with that.
one. Was there any?
Yeah, I'm still going through this.
No,
the
page
in-
one, the ones we already.
Oh, no, we
looked at.
already looked at that.
Is there any other ones that we needed to do this on page one? No?
No, I told you, everything is
Okay.
eligible on the first page. Now we're on the second page, and we're looking at Michael Moriarty's, 1 Holyoke CDC. He submitted something for the Hadley Village Townhouse Preservation, which is a huge structure, 5 structures, 42 townhomes. And 1 Holyoke CDC owns 43 Canal Street and 73 Lyman only. And I told him, and he had nothing, no signatures from all the other owners at all. And so I said, I gave him more time, a week, to provide signed letters from the other owners. And also his application was very sprawling and vague. So I said, can you resubmit this and also provide the signed letters? So on October 17th, he only sent me the letter he had written to get the signatures. Sorry, I don't know what I wrote there. That doesn't make any sense. But he didn't get any signatures. So I told him it was too late unless this is, of course, I alerted him to the emergency application option, but told him it was ineligible and that he could apply again next year otherwise. So that's the story with that one. The next one is,
No, that's fine.
okay,
We're going to move on.
yeah, Dennis Lazur.
Can I,
Sure.
just from a process perspective, the Richardson train, we did a lot of debate and everybody got to vote on whether they agreed or didn't agree with your determination that they were questionable, whether they were eligible or not. I just don't want to pass over if anybody has any thoughts on any of the other determinations that you've made on this page. So if someone disagreed with your interpretation of that and wanted to have a discussion about it, just feel free at any
Yeah,
point.
'cause I think
I'm
that's
not
what we
gonna.
did last year.
Right,
Yeah,
that's why I
this-
wanted, I was hoping to have discuss it with everybody beforehand.
Well, I mean, I think this is fine, or just,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure there isn't
Yeah.
someone sitting here that may not have agreed with, and I'm not
Okay.
talking specifically that one, anyone.
For specifically this project, I agree for just like the ineligibility, because they didn't provide the ample
Yeah.
information and all the signatures.
Yeah,
But I know that I did run into one of the people that owns one of the properties on that lot.
Yeah.
And because just in future, they should apply, right? If they
Yeah.
get their act
It's a really
together,
good project,
Because it's
yeah.
a huge complex and the city, because not one entity owns the whole complex, because nobody is working on the foundation. And they share a roof, they all share a foundation, and it's hard for them to all come together. That's why he got no letters and he got nobody. The one day they all come together and
Right.
organize, they'll be able to apply and fix their little lot, but just,
What are they, condos or?
so at one time, they were the home for the people that worked across the street from the mills,
Yeah.
across the canal. So
Right.
old Holyoke development ended up getting ownership of it back in the 50s or the 60s. They refixed them, and then they sold them out one by one. And when
As
they
a
sold them
condo.
out one by one, it was kind of a bad situation because there is no actual condo association to continue to work together to keep the property up to shape.
Right,
So they have like a little complex in the middle where the people can play and do all that, but all the roots and the trees grew all through it. Everything, like the bricks is falling apart. I grew up in the flat, so I've seen it for years. But at the end of the day, their application, they need a lot more information. So I totally agree with,
yeah. I mean, he submitted it at the last minute because he also submitted another application. And I think it sounds like a great project. It just needs a little more, stuff.
Got to be able
put
to
there.
check the boxes.
Yeah, you gotta be able to check the boxes.
Yeah.
Not keep 'em moving.
Okay, so moving on to the next one from Dennis Lazuriaga of Armor and Company. This is 130 Race Street. And if you look at the third column, it falls under historic rehabilitation of the exterior. They want to, they own this building, they want to make it into a restaurant. It sounds really great. However, I have this on hold, and I'm waiting to hear back from Stuart Saganor. It seems that the historic rehab of the exterior is allowable and fine, and they do own it and everything. But they also included creation of outdoor space, and they mentioned sidewalks. And of course, sidewalks are not eligible because there was, I think, in Acton, they were sued because that's supplanting funds that are already coming through the city for sidewalks. They also mentioned creation of outdoor space, which that's what I'm asking Stuart Saganor about. It's the area where an old train station platform used to be behind the building. They want to replace a roof or recreate the roof that was there. And I guess it'll be like an outdoor seasonal patio place for people who come to the restaurant. So that's what I'm waiting to hear back from Stuart.
Okay, so what are we doing with this one?
So as I said, it's on hold right now because I'm waiting to hear back from Stuart on it, and he said he would get back to me.
My question with creation of outdoor space, right? So in creation of outdoor space, is that gonna be public space?
Yeah, that's exactly my question,
Have
because
to
it
be in
seems
order to be
like
eligible, right?
it seems like it would belong to the people,
To the people it's supposed
who
to
own the
belong.
restaurant. Not everybody. I mean, people could see it, and obviously
And
you funded some buildings that people can't enter, but they appreciate the facade. So maybe just seeing it. So that is an issue
So
too.
it seems like this application has some components to it that
Yeah,
are
unless they're gonna provide
clearly
free Wi-Fi
eligible
and let people come
Right.
in.
and clearly not eligible.
Well, it's not clearly. Well, the sidewalk part is not eligible,
Correct.
but the creation of the outdoor
Unless it was
space,
right, so
I'm not
that's
sure.
what I mean.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That's clearly
So it's a
some that's
question
not
mark.
and some that's questionable. So I would suggest that they clarify,
What's the outdoor
Well,
space?
I did speak with him, and he did clarify, and it's everything I've told you. It's just a matter of finding out through Stuart Saganor if this is eligible or
I
not.
don't even think we gotta ask. For
Okay,
me,
so it's on hold.
I have a question. Is this a different train station than this train
Yes.
station?
Right.
Okay.
It's a
I know.
totally, has nothing to do with the whole Richardson
my,
train station.
my cousin John owned this building.
Okay.
So yeah, in the back, and it was like a butcher shop, and so they had the train comes in. That's the building. It's kind of shaped funny. It came alongside, and
Ooh, I know what you're talking
there's a
about.
loading platform there. There's a mural painted
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
side of
and they
it.
tagged the mural.
So it's
Okay.
that building on Race Street between the other.
So just
Very-
again, just with the creation of outdoor space, I don't think it's the same as the Boys and Girls Club, right?
Yeah, I don't think they meant that to fall under the recreational space or
Okay.
anything, but they meant that under historic, but they're just describing it that way.
Yeah.
So
So-
if I remember right, on projects that I've been around before, as long as it's visible by people from the public, then it's eligible,
Oh, then that's a different
because it's
situation.
enhancing the
Okay.
area.
Okay, that's a different.
Yeah, so it might be.
No, that's a great
I
point.
just want clarification, on that, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that I'll definitely be telling them that at least the historic exterior is eligible, but I just need his input on the other part. Okay, and so the next one was from Mike McManus, and I just learned from Stuart Saganor that this is ineligible. It's for the Fairfield, he called it the Fairfield Island Project. Also, Marco, we'd been in touch about this, and you had told me, I found out from Mike, that it's to hire a landscape architect to do a study to beautify this traffic island within this local historic district. But today I heard back from Stuart Saganor, and he said that a traffic island, even within a district, is not considered historic. It's not within the intention of the way this was written, because it's not really restoring historic elements, and it doesn't qualify under open space either. And he actually sent me his email where he laid all this out, which I can share with you, Marco.
Can I speak on this? a
Of
little
course,
bit?
that's what- yeah,
Because-
I'm-
Yeah, because I'm chair of the local historic district commission. Like, is nothing possible then? Because I would have thought that's open space, it's public space.
I can tell you what he sent. I can show you. Let me
And I
just-
think
I think it's like sidewalks, a sidewalk.
It's kind of falls under the city at large rather than under.
The DPW manages that area.
Parks and
I guess
Recs.
it is kind of a traffic island, but yeah, Fairfield Avenue, when you turn off of Northampton, it's a single road,
Yeah.
and it divides, and there's an
Divides into
island
two,
for
yeah.
like a couple hundred feet,
Yeah.
and then it comes back together for a couple more blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worked with Olivia Mosul and, Mike McManus on trying to, it's all run down, it gets
Yeah.
cut, the grass gets cut twice
Yeah.
a year, and it gets, raked once a year, and that's it. And
So-
also the dead trees and.
Yeah, here's what Stuart Saganor said. He said, "We don't think the Fairfield Avenue traffic island is what the legislature had in mind as a, quote, historic resource for CPA purposes." And then he quoted, "Historic resources, a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, or artifact that is listed on the State Register of Historic Places or has been determined by the local Historic Preservation Commission to be significant to the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of a city or town." Then he said the historic designation for CPA projects is made on the individual resource. So in this case, it's the Fairfield Avenue traffic island that has to be a historic resource to be eligible.
So first of all, it's not just the island, but it's from sidewalk to sidewalk and from Pleasant to Northampton. So it's even when it stops being an island, I was thinking they would even propose some plantings along the other part. There's a map, and the map of the historic district isn't just a little buildings.
I get where you're getting at with it. I think rephrasing things, right?
Well, so-
Just because if we're calling it a traffic island, right, automatically to Stewart, right, a traffic island, he don't know what it looked like probably.
Well, he did read the application as written, so.
Does he know what does he know what it looks
Yeah,
like
he-
though? I don't
Well,
think
he knows it's in a
exactly.
historic district, but if I can just finish reading what he said, quote, "A historic district is not a CP eligible resource. It's the assets in the district that are eligible. It's hard to imagine," yeah, and it's true, maybe he was just thinking that. He said, "It's hard to imagine a traffic island brings significance in the history, cultural,
Phrase it as if
architecture,
it's a
archaeology of
park.
Holyoke."
If you phrase it as if it's a park.
And then he said, if some significant event had happened on the island, or if there were Olmsted design plantings that were going to be rehabilitated,
garden.
that it might be, or maybe just the island can't be done.
You could call it a garden, a community garden.
Public
type.
garden,
It's more of a
community
public
garden.
Right, if you call it, right, if you call it a public garden,
Public garden.
then,
It's not a traffic island.
But then it's, all right, so then it would fall under, the thing is, it doesn't qualify, the problem is it also doesn't qualify under open space, and it's not recreation, because open space is limited to land to protect existing and future well fields, aquifers, and recharge areas, watershed land, agricultural land, grassland, fields, forests, etc., salt water marshes, wetlands, ocean, river streams. So it doesn't fall under that, and it
Okay.
doesn't fall under recreation either.
I think
So-
it can fall under open space if you phrase it to be urban.
right.
No, it can't, because did you hear what I just read? It can't fall under open space because it's not, this is how it's defined. It's defined as what I just said,
So
well
say that
fields,
again.
land to protect existing and future well fields, aquifers and recharge areas, watershed land, agricultural land, grasslands, fields, forest land, fresh and saltwater marshes and other wetlands, ocean, river, stream, lake, and pond frontage, beaches, dunes, and other coastal lands, lands to protect scenic vistas, land for wildlife or nature preserve, and land for recreational use.
So it is land for wildlife, because in an urban area, you have to have small spaces with native species.
I know what you're talking about,
To
yeah,
bring
but-
in wildlife, whether it's butterflies, birds, whatever else. You know me, I love a good
That,
nature
or-
project.
Or you could put benches, right, and then you can call it a park.
People do use the park.
I would
In
think.
it the other day.
That's what I was gonna say. You could
Dogs in it. I guess that what I would want to do,
Call it a park.
because I don't want to use
Call
up
it
the
a park.
commission's time now, but I would want to understand, is this now going to be like voted down, eliminated?
Oh, no, I haven't
The most
notified,
people vote for it.
I haven't notified anybody on that, even though it's under there, so you might want to make a note that nothing, I haven't notified anybody on this, so, but I'm just sharing with you.
Sure, and my interest is in trying to see this through. I want to avoid any impropriety. Like,
No.
But you're gonna allow him to change the application. You're right, you're gonna change the description, so, that's.
I think also maybe it would be good for me to forward you Stuart's email and for you to have some discussion with him about it.
love the
That might
opportunity.
actually be
Okay.
better off.
Email a picture of the thing.
Yeah, because
Show
we,
him.
we just didn't let the guy
It's a
who
park.
doesn't
Well,
own
yeah.
it.
He thinks it's a
Some-
little.
This is the hard part,
How
right?
much
Right.
This
money?
is the hard part. It's this judgment calls, these
much
gray
money?
areas.
No,
and-
but that-
And
that's-
trying to be
This guy needs
consistent.
like 25,000.
I think what she just said right now solves the gray area, like what she says for them to communicate with each other. So technically, he's just communicating back and forth, and if it comes out, if he communicates to Stewart and it still comes out that it's no, then, right, there's nothing we can do.
And I would suggest that this application is more consistent with the Armor and Company one, which we said is on hold, clarifying whether,
creation of
some
space.
parts meet, some don't, than it is on the application where the owner is not able to submit a complete application because they don't own the property.
Oh, you're
Right? I
talking
mean,
about
there's some more, one is, you're able to check the boxes, but there's some questions about, technical questions about the eligibility. The other is, you're just not eligible because you don't meet it. So, I mean,
Okay,
what's the committee's will? We could
yes,
just keep it on hold. We could take a vote up or down on the eligibility and, they still gotta qualify for funding.
Yeah, just for what it's worth, this year we were going to do a study, so it's hiring a landscape architect to see, to do a service, and then come up with a plan, and then in future years, we were thinking, maybe one year we'll plant some trees, maybe one year, following the recommendations of the landscape architect.
Well, okay, so then you don't need funding this year, because we can't do an architect.
We can fund studies, but it has to be an allowable study.
So that, I
Allowable.
need somebody to tell
Oh,
me
I thought we
what we
couldn't
can do
do
or not.
architects.
We can fund studies, just like, Mike has submitted an application for a study.
Right, okay.
If
Okay, I
it's
see. Oh,
allowable.
Study, okay, I see, not,
But,
but he wants the money to hire the architect to do the study, is what?
Well, that's
That's okay?
what you do.
the same.
I think that's fine.
Okay,
It's
so
a
we
matter of
can't
what-
hire, we can't
So I
pay
think,
to an architect to do the work, we can only
design.
pay him to do a study, okay.
Marco, can I ask, have you seen the eligibility application for this? Because it might be a good idea for me to forward it to you with Stuart's notes. Oh. Well, that's okay. I mean, Mike worked on an application. You're allowed to submit,
Okay, so how about, if the board, the commission is okay with, putting it on hold,
Yeah.
I'll review the application, and perhaps I can speak to Mr. Saganor.
Right,
Try
and-
to understand where the sticking points are.
Yeah, and if you could CC me on it, because I can learn a lot, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
So cross out ineligible, and we'll just put question mark and, more communication with Marco and Stuart.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, and then now we're on to open space, the first page here. These are the ones who have been notified that they are eligible for an open space or recreational project. We got all recreational. Greater Holyoke YMCA. This is, you can see the proposed work. I'm not going to read it out loud. A recreational space for community use, similar to the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club. The next one you see is Parks and Rec. The next two ones are both from Parks and Rec. Mayor Field and
Those are awesome.
Jones Point Park.
I just
And
have to say, those are awesome, thank you. No, I'm just
yeah, and it has to do with making them ADA compliant with the play
Well,
equipment and so forth. Yeah.
just a quick note, right? So with Parks and Recs, we've fixed a lot of parks, right? With CDBG money can only work in certain parts of the community. It doesn't work in Merrifield. Merrifield can't be fixed off of CDBG money. Jones Point can't get no money from there. So like when she sent the email to me, I was like, yes, thank you, because I want those parks to be fixed too, up the hill.
absolutely.
Like everyone needs new parks, not
Right.
just the lower wards. Like,
No, you're right.
yeah. Anyways.
okay, so that's good news on those.
Okay, so you can see those,
Two
and then
interesting projects there.
moving on to the next, oh, wait a sec, do I have both pages here? Okay,
Oh, God.
At the end?
oh yeah, moving on to the back of that page. You can see, the first one is highly charged. This is a very complicated one, which I've had, I got the background on it. It's from the Holyoke Public Schools in the city of Holyoke, as you can see, and it is to do with the proposed Holyoke Middle School sites that have not even been built or voted on yet, to they were requesting funding for the playgrounds. And this struck me as kind of strange. And I got the background from Mimi, and also we consulted with Stuart Saganor, and he said that this is ineligible because these funds would be considered supplanting of funds, since the Massachusetts School Board Association, building, MSBA's language on project includes playgrounds. So in other words, what they're putting forward with the override includes the playground in the initial model. So that means voters are voting for the MSBA to fund it.
Would this take money off though?
You can't do that because it's considered supplanting. I can share with you
No,
what he said.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I think the intention of them.
Oh, you mean
applying-
if they
That
took
is
it off?
I think the
Yes,
intention of them
okay.
applying is to take a hit off of the overall bill.
Right, it is the intention.
Yeah, but if it's illegal, it's illegal.
No, I totally
But
understand
if
that. I
the,
totally
and if
understand
the
that.
state money can't be
No.
reduced, but.
No, I totally
but-
understand all
but
that.
what-
I think that's just the intention behind
Yeah.
it.
If the state money includes the playgrounds, then we can't fund it, because if it was the city side, what we're voting on, that could be reduced, but.
The conversation that I had with Stuart Saginaw about this a few months ago, he basically said, yes, it would be, the goal from the state is not to see municipal funding replaced through CPC, but that each CPC has to decide for itself how it wants to spend its money in the end. And he said if it could be argued that without the CPC making its show of support for the project, that project literally wouldn't happen, then it wouldn't be considered supplanting.
Yeah, what Stuart said.
It's messy.
What he said today, in his email, or actually no, this was on October 8th, he said the city will not be able to use CPA funds on this project according to the no supplanting rule in the last line of Section 6 of Chapter 44B, which is the CPA legislation. In fact, the no supplanting rule was written specifically to avoid this exact situation. The legislature didn't want communities to approve a bond under the Prop 2.5 provisions of an override vote and then pay some or all of the debt service using CPA funds. If a reference to 44B wasn't included in the language as a funding source or partial funding source, you can't use CPA funds to pay the debt service on this bond. This would also apply to a direct appropriation that didn't need bonding. We confirmed this with Department of Revenue back in 2006 when I started, and
That was my phone.
Dan Murphy of the Division of Local Services wrote, the reference Section B language would preclude the replacement or amendment of the financing source by later substituting CPA funds. This would be our view regardless of whether the money has been actually spent or not. And this makes perfect sense in your situation, as folks in Holyoke certainly were not voting to use CPA funds for new school construction when they approved the local surcharge of CPA.
We don't want to get involved in that anyways. We don't want to be supporting or not supporting, or
And then,
I agree.
we don't want to be.
yeah, I have a little more info
And
to
if
share.
it was eligible, it would
We
be
could
eligible.
consider it,
would
right, but it's not.
be, us voting to fund something showing support, it's just clearly.
Nah, I wouldn't be
But
showing
it
support. It
sounds,
would be saving money. if
That's
it
not
worked.
really, if it were clearly eligible, we wouldn't be able to not deal with the application.
Right.
But it sounds like it has a lot of words there. Sounds to me like it's ineligible because it wasn't.
Sounds like a duplication of
If they had
services.
applied for that funding as part of a park, say, contingent upon
Getting approval.
another plan that did not include the money for the budget of these playing fields, then it might be eligible in that scenario. But because the overall budget and the proposed Prop 2.5 override includes the money for the parks to then now come and say,
Right,
we want to reduce that
Because it would-
spending of money on the
because it would look
CPA.
like we were supporting.
It's a plan,
Yeah.
well, wouldn't
It would be
supplanting
breaking the
those
law.
things. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with you about,
Yeah.
on a very controversial issue,
Right, it's the perception.
taking a,
And one thing I would,
stand
I'm
on
not
it,
afraid of backlash, right? I'm not afraid
No,
of
me
any of
either.
that, of any controversial issue. My whole life has been controversial, so that's not the issue with me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, overall, that's not the part. The part is it's kind of a duplication of services. At the end of the day, we're granted a certain amount of money for the park already, and they're applying for more money for that same exact park that they are already getting money for. If that wasn't the case, right? If it wasn't that they said within the project that there is a park already included, then they're saying,
Right.
we want a park with the school that's coming.
Right.
They would be eligible for the application. But because they already said there's a park already
Right.
included, they're not eligible.
So that's what I'm saying. If
yeah.
we did
Unless-
this, if we decided that was eligible now, then we would look like
Yeah,
we were
would look,
supporting the project.
We went over,
No,
yeah.
but we can't even say it's.
Yeah,
yeah, it's not,
No.
right, we can't either way because
Well,
it's
that's what I'm
against,
saying.
yeah. But one other issue I want to raise, though, is that it might be better to wait until after the November 5th vote to respond to this application, because if we do that beforehand, it's possible that at the last minute, they might try to change the language. I don't know if they can do that at this
no,
point.
they can't.
Okay.
And I think it's improper to not take an action because you're concerned about the signal that it might send, because not taking the action sends
A signal too.
a signal. All of these applications are being handled the same way. So
Okay, so you think I'll just let them know. that it's
Well, I
ineligible.
think just stating
Right,
what we were told
right,
is obvious enough that if,
Right.
if we could
okay.
vote one way or another, we would, but it's not even eligible because
Okay.
we can't.
Okay, so I will notify them of that. And then moving on, Holyoke Housing Authority. Now, I didn't respond to this one yet because I started to get worried. What if this is also a supplanting issue, But then, of course, I said to the Parks and Rec that they are eligible. It probably isn't. It's probably eligible. I was trying to say two words at once. It's probably eligible. But I just to be safe, I emailed Stuart Saganor. This is for a basketball court that the Holyoke Housing Authority.
But the one with the school is a vote. and
Right,
it's- and
I
it's
think that's why it's
including
probably fine.
the fields.
Yeah.
This, they're not, this is the funding that they're going after is only from us.
right,
Right.
and it's not.
You're right. So it's probably totally
It's fine.
eligible. Yeah.
And it's not like mowing grass, which you can't fund, but, installing additional seating.
Yeah, I just started
restoration
to
of
get worried
basketball
about
courts.
everything because it just threw such a wrench into my thinking when I got
Can I
back.
ask a question about the supplanting law or the provision? Isn't in some way all of this connected? It seems very vague to me now that I'm thinking about it, because we're just talking about finding 2 parks eligible.
That's what I
but
just was talking
those
about.
things would be paid for out of the city budget. And it would be, effectively, we're stepping in as a stopgap in every case for stuff that should be covered by the municipal budget, but it
The difference that they're
can't.
pointing out is that there isn't money for it. There isn't
That's-
already a proposal out for money for it through another source. So that's the
Right.
difference.
That's the difference.
And you can't do things like maintenance. You can't use CPA funds. That's why I use the example of, mowing grass. You can't do that because that's part of your operating budget.
Right.
So
But to go in and install benches and playscapes and,
But
in a
if, for
perfect
example,
world, that
Parks
would
and
be in the
Rec
municipal
had it in
budget.
its budget, that coming
They had
up
it.
was Mayor Field, that was the next park to be done. It was somewhere in a document. And they came to us and said,
we would still vote yes on it probably.
well, but my question is just, I'm trying to
I get
figure
what
out
you're
where is
saying.
the
I get-
line between where is supplanting and where is it eligible?
So we might unknowingly supplant
Yeah.
in that case, right? But
Well, maybe we should ask. Is there,
Well, I already informed them that they're eligible, so.
I don't think we want to
No,
open up
also-
that, I don't think we
Yeah.
need to do that level of due diligence on, and it just,
okay.
this one is so public and it's out there, I think it's hard to ignore that. I
think the difference is that you're getting already state funding, which is MSBA funding, for that basketball court or whatever playground structure they're creating. You're already getting some sort of state funding, right? CPA is supposedly state funding, even though they don't really match.
But the
you to
stained
that
glass
number.
project is also getting
But
state
at
funding.
the what?
Stained glass.
But the stained glass
Stained
project
glass?
is also getting state funding.
Maybe we're
But,
gonna,
that's supplementing.
matching, though.
Yeah, they're
That's
matching.
supplementing,
That's
yeah.
different. Where like,
Supplementing.
if, like with Parks and Recs, if you're doing a park, they didn't apply to the state, Pouliot Pool, for example. We got state grant for that. I think for Pouliot Pool, I don't think we would be able to apply for open space because we're getting millions of dollars for Pouliot Pool granted through the state. I don't think we'd be able to do both of those at the same time.
And then take that money instead and
Oh,
use it
for
for Mayor Field, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
So Marefield, so the struggle, to elaborate, Marefield, any parks up the hill, right? I want to say, up the hill, right?
Yeah.
Any parks up the hill.
upper wards,
Yeah.
the upper wards.
So any parks up the hill, Parks and Recs does not have the budget to touch anything at the end of the day. They don't even have the budget to hire extra staff to take care of the parks so that when they cut the grass up there 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 times. In the flats, they don't even cut it that much. And the place is right across the street. You know what I mean? So like, they don't really have the staff to continue to take care or maintain all the parks. When it comes to that, our capacity is not to that extent. But CPA, the open parks, the idea to be able to improve the parks up the hill, I feel like CPA, the open parks part, that is the idea, to help communities like ours that are strapped for cash and want to be able to help different parts of the community to do that. So,
Because there's no other funding
Right, 'cause there's
available
no
for
other
those
funding,
parks,
so
so they
Right.
don't meet the demographics.
so like, I have an idea, like that one day, right, at Kelly School, I would like for that field that they got there to be hooked up, kind of like a whole softball field, because they play legit softball down there faithfully, right? I would like it to have a booth, kind of like Mackenzie, but on a smaller scale. But that would have to be a collaboration between a nonprofit organization that's down there already, which would probably be One Holyoke, and it would have to be between the public school system and Parks and Recs. Between all three of them, then they would have to come and apply through CPAC to try to get as much money, because CDBG is not going to give them enough money to be able to do that whole park. That can be done with the school department because they don't already have an application with the state to get money coming in. If that clarifies my reasoning, at least. I don't know if it's right. Hopefully, but I don't know. I get what you're saying though, because it does feel like we are supplanting other projects because there are certain things, but it's not
I mean,
to
that-
that extent. It's
I mean,
not to
I
that
had the
extent. I
same
don't think so.
question, exactly what you're saying, Megan, which is, I actually looked up and I tried to see if other CPA communities have funded through Parks and Rec, and I couldn't find anything. However, I just want to add that remember that many of you are from boards, and we have a Parks and Rec person, right? Izzy. So I think that I can't see Meg.
Okay.
That part of the idea behind creating the committee was to have representatives from these places like Parks and Rec, Housing Authority, et cetera, and that was because you have the knowledge to bring forth ideas for CPA funding.
But I think if you
So-
looked at Southampton, all their playing fields are done by CPA. And all the signs.
And those are all
up on those
Parks and
fields,
Rec?
And they're all Parks and Rec.
Well, and, I mean, that's the whole,
It's an
it does seem to be
extension.
contradictory
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
the whole purpose of the CPA funding is to fund projects that cannot be
That's
funded out of the
right,
municipal
right.
budget.
Right.
Right?
Right. And I
So-
think, Meg, we can also say that in their application, I can advise them, make it clear that, that there's no other, that you don't have other resources for funding this, and this is an extension of what you would normally do. Like, I could
I think the
mention
school
that to-
project would have been eligible if it wasn't part of the override and
Right.
the entire
Right,
package
that's it.
that they're moving
Right.
forward on. If this was an extra, if they were looking for extra funding to
Right.
do certain fields, then they would have been eligible. So in the future, they might be if they want to put in extras.
Right.
But at this point, it's not eligible. But the other ones are because they are projects.
Okay, so we only have 2 more on here to look at for the eligibility. There's a lot, as you see, and these were pretty straightforward. I think, let's see where I am.
They're eligible.
Yeah, the 2 housing proposals, one from Mike Moriarty, again, from the One Holyoke CDC, for home ownership housing for 800 to 808
Oh.
Dwight Street, a new 2-family home. This is creation of housing. And the other one is the Holyoke Housing Authority. And again, as you can see, I got worried whether or not this was supplanting, but I think we just resolved that question. Construction of 2 single-family homes on Jackson Street. So both of those have been told that they're eligible.
All right.
Okay.
So are all your questions answered, Amy?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
So that takes care of item number 4, is that correct?
Yep.
Further
Yep.
discussion on that, so we'll move to agenda item number 5. And it is the application submission procedure, and it has Mike Falsetti's name. So is it that you have a question, or are we talking about you?
Well, you're both. It just occurred to me, when I put my application into Amy, the 11 copies of my proposal, I went down to Staples and it cost me $20, and I got all the copies made for 11 individuals to read and look over. I just thought of something. What if, and it's good it is good as we currently have it, to do it electronically, to just submit it to Amy, it's clean, you know it's there, we're good to go. But I said, what if a person doesn't have the wherewithal or doesn't have a computer? Or doesn't know, like me, doesn't know how to handle a computer? You're kind of at the mercy of hoping you get it right. So I wanted to have in our application, as it says on the first page, Amy, if you can correct me, it says electronically submit to so-and-so, or make 11 copies and give it to the registrar's office. I'd like to change that, or to put again, I'm saying, if you don't have a computer, in this day and age, what if there's someone who's on this board, or a Holyoke citizen that doesn't have a computer? He's not going to know really all that much what's going on. He's going to be at a disadvantage. Like posting the meetings, if you don't have a computer, you'd never know when we would meet. We took it upon ourselves to post it publicly. So a guy walking down the street can come in here and look at a citizen, say, all right, 6 o'clock Monday, we're having a meeting. The average guy in the street can do that. So I'm saying the same thing. Like what I did, I went down to Staples, I got the copies made, it cost me $20, and I gave the stack to you, Amy, and I said, why can't everybody do this for people that may not have a computer? I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
Well, everybody can do that if they choose, just like you did. All the other applicants for eligibility chose to send it electronically because it was simply easier for them. But others could do what you did. It was a choice.
So I have just if you made your copies, they go to where, the CPA office?
No, at our last meeting, I had a stack of them, and I gave it to Amy and said, here's my 11 copies as per
So how would
instructions.
somebody get those? By
Well, I
going to
have
the
those.
CPA?
I guess, actually, in reality, it seems like this committee likes to look at things electronically, so I didn't end up distributing those copies. So maybe we should just,
Yeah, no, I like a hard copy. I don't like, I
Oh,
don't
you
like
do like
reading,
hard
I don't like
copies?
reading
Oh.
on the computer.
I like hard copies too. I'm old-fashioned. I like hard
Yeah,
copies.
So I guess
but I
my-
mean, you can always print them out on your end
But I
if
can
you
deal.
choose.
Let the guy if it's your proposal, you pay for it. Why should we pay for it?
So I guess there's my concern, so I guess your concern is for us, the person that's sitting in this chair right now, right?
Or is it
You
for the
didn't own a
applicant?
computer.
Right, so if we don't have a computer, then I guess I would suggest, do we have it in the budget so that she can print them out, or someone else can print them out and bring them to the meeting for us?
Well, what I'm saying is, why should we pick up the tab for the printing? If it's Izzy's proposal to put something at Jones Point, then Izzy, you do what I do. I went down to Staples, it cost me $20.
I respect
I made
that.
the 11 copies, and I gave it to Amy.
If it's in the application ahead of time,
Although
I
in
would
this
do it.
case, Kip asked me to just create a chart, and nobody responded to the link I sent with the eligibility application, so it seems like the chart was the most useful thing for
Well,
people.
I just thought for today, instead of having a stack of them, to be able to go through a summary
Right,
of them
right.
and what categories
This
and.
part I don't mind, but when we get the full application.
The full application.
I like
The-
hard
Yes,
copy.
and,
Yeah, but I'd
and that
rather
is
read it.
required.
So I'm
It is
confused
required,
whether-
yeah.
Are you saying you want to modify our application so that you can submit electronically or hard copies?
So you have to do
It already
both.
does that.
It
And
already
You
does.
have to do
want
both, or
both.
you can do one or the other?
Right
well,
now.
I
Wants
would
them to do
prefer
both.
It sounds like
And are you
both.
Instead of
talking
putting
about
or, change it to
eligibility,
Yeah.
or are you
then
talking
that
about the
doesn't-
eligibility application?
No, keep just change one word.
But you're talking about the one you submitted, the
Yes,
eligibility.
the eligibility application, and then any other application for that matter.
Uh-huh.
So electronically, it works for Amy because it goes right to her computer.
Oh, I see what
She
you're
can
saying.
do it.
Right.
But for the rest of us,
Oh, I
or
see
for the
what you're
guy
saying.
sitting at home or doesn't have a computer, he's out of luck.
Oh, you mean, okay.
So, but if you're, Kip, for your proposal, if you make, like I did, I went down to Staples, it cost me $20.
I understand. I was
And I gave
confused.
the stack and I gave it to Amy. Now, everybody has a hard copy, whether you got a computer or not. You got a hard copy that you can read.
It saves Amy the time from printing, it saves our,
Yeah, why should we pay for it? Let the guy who's putting in the proposal pay for it.
Should it be for the initial one also, or
Both.
just
Both.
in the day and age
For
of
both
trying
that
to
already-
not to clutter the world with
Well,
paper?
I'm saying, what if the guy, I'm saying for fairness, like the guy out here who doesn't have a computer, you
But they
don't know
could
where our
walk to
meetings
the
are.
office or call and ask for okay, well, we
The
can do
full-
it that way. I think the full application is definitely required.
Yeah, and the full
Yes.
application already requires both.
It already
okay.
does, so
All
we
right.
don't have to worry about
you
that.
want
He's just worried about eligibility.
I guess my one concern, I mean, it's just that I just feel like it would mean producing a ton of paper for all of you, and I don't know if all of you
Well,
really.
no, not necessarily,
Yeah,
you
pay
don't have
for
to
it.
produce.
If
You
it's
don't
your
have to
proposal,
Oh, I
you
know.
pay
I'm not
for it.
talking about that. I'm talking about wasting paper
Okay.
because I don't know if people will
Other
really
things
look
other
at
than
that.
the
The
application.
eligibility application, we can ask, who wants a hard copy of the eligibility application? If you don't, if you want one, then
I prefer
Amy
to
will
have
make
one.
you one.
Yeah, all the
Yeah,
time. I don't like,
Yeah. So someone, so,
But
then you don't have.
I think that would be better. Whoever
Yeah,
wants
ask-
hard copies,
ask,
let
yeah.
me know,
all right,
Yeah.
that's what you want.
Yeah.
All right.
Just because
Rather
I
than-
think a lot of paper might just go to waste because I don't know if people are really.
Well, especially on the eligibility one,
Yeah.
that's easy enough to read online.
It is,
Right.
yeah,
It's only like a
Yeah.
simple
It's the
thing.
huge, the
It's
bigger one,
when you
yeah.
get a true proposal.
right,
It's
That
nice
you-
to have a hard copy.
yeah.
But if you want a hard copy, and I know what you're saying, like, why should we pay for that? But to ask all the applicants to provide, I mean, how many applications were there?
There was, I think, like 17. Let me see. 5,
11 times
16,
17.
Yeah.
Yeah,
18.
for
I
me,
don't
it was
want-
20 bucks. I had like four, I had 4 or 5 pages for.
We'll have to go back to the veterans and ask them to reimburse you.
That's okay. But my point is, if it's like 2 pages and you get 11 copies, 2 or 3 pages,
Right, yeah,
it's
of
not like
course.
it's $300.
Right,
It's like
right.
25 bucks, 20
Right.
bucks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we
But
don't
it's up
all
to you
need-
guys,
We
whatever you
don't all
want to
need
do.
hard copies of that.
I think,
What is it?
I think he brought up a good point where it comes to the, not every board member or whoever's here possibly has a computer or has the resources to get to that. So, but the thing is that the person might have to let someone know ahead of time, can I have hard copies? Because I might
I'll
not.
do that. I mean, if that's what you all think would be a better way, I'll just tell Amy I'd like to have a hard copy.
Yeah. Because that is a valid point if they don't have computers.
And then,
Like,
No, in terms of democracy, the average guy walking down the street, if you don't have a computer, you don't even know when if we didn't post our meetings,
right.
you wouldn't know when we're meeting.
Actually, this point that you're raising, I think, is really important for applicants who don't have computers. Making sure that they are able to apply and that not having a computer doesn't get in the way of
well,
applying.
that's what I thought you were getting at.
Both. I mean,
So
yeah.
so our application requires electronic filing
No.
and hard copies?
Or.
it's
Or.
Okay,
It's or.
great.
Right.
So people, can-
And
if
he
they,
wanted to make it and.
so that they have to do
And.
both.
Yeah.
So, or.
Okay, I just wanted to make
people who
sure.
Who don't use a computer.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
So or is.
Okay, opposite side.
Wait,
I wanted to change the or to and. You have to do it electronically for Amy and 11 copies for us.
if you're applying.
Or,
And it says and, then you have to do both.
Yes.
But then what if people don't have?
So,
like someone doesn't have, so an applicant doesn't have access to a computer.
And they have to apply
They want
electronically?
to submit an application, but they can't do both. They can't
They can do
submit-
both. They can do both. Why not? I
Because they
said
don't have a
and.
computer.
Then don't do it. Then make a print.
That's why
Well, they
it says
also may
or.
not be able to
Okay,
afford
all right,
making
I hear-
copies.
I got you.
There's a
You're
lot of
right.
it.
one
You're
of them
right.
is, one of
No,
them is
you're
speaking
right.
for the board member and one of them is speaking for the applicant.
The logistics
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
I know,
yeah,
but the terminology, I think we've got it covered the way it is.
No, you're right. You're
Okay.
right. No, you're right.
Because I get your point.
I was just wondering about the person that doesn't own a computer.
You know,
And you're,
Because then otherwise they'd have to produce both.
yeah.
Right, anything
Okay.
else?
Maybe what I could do is not require that you have to make 11 copies for the eligibility, so that someone like you won't have to spend $20, but instead,
But he
Make
doesn't,
it be
he
5
wants to do
copies.
it. He
well, you want it from others, but you don't, nobody really needs hard copies of yours, so that's,
I'll ask you for one, Amy. That's all. That'll
All right.
end
All
it.
That's
right,
fine.
let's.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
So agenda item number 6, Holyoke Historic Commission role in the CPA application process. With Marco there.
So I wrote up.
Oh, okay. Here's one for Amy.
So Amy had asked me, we had had a couple of back and forth emails about the Holyoke Historical Commission and how they work with the CPC on the application review process. And so I just wrote this up so we could have something in writing that might, be a roadmap to say what our expectations are, and maybe we'll hear back from them as well, because I shared this with Ben Murphy, is he secretary? Not secretary, he's a project manager.
Yeah, I don't know what his title is, but yeah, he works
So,
with the Holyoke.
yeah, he
Historic
works with the
Commission and
Holyoke
Planning
Historical
Office.
Commission. So I don't know if we want to take a moment and read this and make any edits to it and continue to share it. I'm not sure if this becomes an official document or, we just want to take a moment and read.
Excuse me for 1 minute.
When you speak of the Holyoke Historic Commission's appointed representative, is that you?
Yes.
Okay,
Or,
Or
whoever else
whoever.
comes after me.
right.
And this was to clear up the,
Just so the Holyoke Historical Commission understands what their role is,
Okay.
with CPA.
okay. So this doesn't have to do with when we were talking about before, like getting a person to do the hiring someone or?
this is-
No,
Okay.
Marco, I was just wondering about the very last sentence.
Yep.
Finally, the HHC may acquire, hold, and manage, in the name of the city, historical restrictions on properties receiving CPC funding. Is that kosher? Does
Yeah.
anybody know?
that's how most CPA communities do preservation restrictions
so
that
that's
are
the normal-
non-city, on non-city funded projects.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
Yeah, and I kind of threw that in there at the end. If
I think it's
if
good.
it's not relevant, we can certainly strike it.
Oh, it's very relevant. It's important.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
that's-
all right.
I think it's great.
Yeah, well done.
So what I would do at this point then would be, I'll hear back from Ben Murphy. I can share his comments with this commission. And then I'll attend their next meeting. I think it's going to be in November. And, kind of go back and forth. I got to say, they seem a little hesitant to take on responsibilities like making decisions. It doesn't seem like they're willing to sort of put them, like expose themselves to making like decisions on, like they don't, I gave an example, for instance, of, we would want to know on a certain project if it were more important to restore the windows or recreate a roof line or, talk about some kind of material change and they're like, well, why would we do that? We would want people to, come to us with things that they want to do. And I'm just trying to explain, well, we would look for guidance related to historical resources that you presumably would know about. So I'm just not sure how it's going to go back and forth.
Yeah.
The only piece that I would wonder about is adding in the word prioritization somewhere.
Sure.
Because we talked with them when they came earlier this year that one of the main things that we would like their support on is if we have 6 eligible applications, help us determine which is the most historically significant and should be thus prioritized for
Well,
funding.
that's what I
So
had
a
hoped.
bit of ranking in some way.
I had hoped that, but Ben Murphy told me that they're not comfortable with doing that prioritizing.
But they could tell us, we think this is an invaluable asset to the city for these following reasons, or we think that it has some significance. Like maybe there's a way for them to cue significance to us to help us prioritize.
I think that they might have some concerns about the politics and how that will look if they get involved in that way. That's the feedback I'm getting from Ben Murphy. So
So.
It's just they're the
so-
experts.
So,
they're not really experts.
Well, we would hope they would be.
Some have some knowledge, but I'm not saying that they don't have any.
But aren't they the historical commission, right?
Yeah, they're the Holyoke Historical Commission. I think it would be very useful if they could prioritize.
If we can't make a decision and we can't come to a decision, they can't help us make a decision? Or
I mean,
they're just
I
afraid
think,
to?
right, because I think the bottom line is that this committee makes the decision, but you might be, listen to what they suggest or recommend, or like Meg is saying, so they would be able to weigh in, but the ultimate responsibility for the decision is the
falls with
committee.
us, yeah.
But if
They're
all
free
of
to
the
do that now,
applications,
right? I mean, there's nothing that prohibits them from doing that. Look at the applications and say, hey, we think this is really important. They can come in during a public comment period, or representative of them come in
But
and
what we're
say,
saying
the
is that
commission
they-
has taken a position that they think that this is an extremely important
Right.
well, we've said though
asset
that
of the community.
every applicant who wants to apply for historic preservation funding has to have some sort of letter from the historic
No, I didn't-
commission, and
If
which
they're
I
not
think
on the
should be
state register.
here. But as a result, though, if all of these projects are coming to them and they're all coming with letters, it negates them going to them at all, because then all of them just have the same letter. Yes.
Well, just so you know,
And then
they
might as
are
well not-
appearing,
Right.
and Ben is really trying to connect the actual applicants with the Holyoke Historical Commission, because he really feels it's important that they know what their projects are, even if their project's on the state register. So that's one way he's trying to pull them more into what we're doing.
I just think that's where it would be important for them to come back and say, and this project seems more significant than others.
Great.
Because otherwise, they're basically saying, since they're all eligible, here's a form letter. It negates the impact of them having any role. If they're all treating every project as if they're the exact
Well,
same.
maybe some of them aren't, though. They might say no in some of their letters, because they're not. That's their role, is to say yes or no.
I think you're
Fair
making a
enough.
good point, though, because every single project they have said yes to in terms of letters. So you are making a really good point.
However, instead of asking them to rank the projects for us, they are saying that part of eligibility that it qualifies for, it meets their support. But they're also free to communicate through their representative, just like Park and Rec is free to communicate through theirs. We think this park should be a priority. And they have the ability as residents of the city to come in a public forum and say, whether as a representative of the historic commission or not, to say, I think that is a very important project. I would hope that the committee would take that comment into consideration. I can see them being reluctant to rank projects for us, and I don't think that's their role.
No, I don't either.
So, my 2 cents. Anything else?
Well, just real quick, what I would plan to do then is, I'll take this eligibility document, and I'll probably review the historically related item. Here's what we got for applications. Here are the ones that we deemed eligible or ineligible. And I would, unlike last year where we only went to them sort of on an emergency basis, this year I'd want to keep them well informed. Have them understand what the applications are. If we have questions about applications, I'll go to them and ask them those specific questions. And this is what this was meant to be.
Right.
Where they're going to, inform us, and where they're, assisting us in the decision-making process with their expertise. That's basically what I'm looking for.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go first.
No, you
I
go
just have
first.
one little thing.
You go first, Rosemary.
I just want to bring up that we were going to, several meetings back, we were going to talk about having some sort of banner on some of our projects, so we get it out to people that CPA is working, and this is how it is working. So I'm not sure if we ever followed through on contacting anybody for like a banner, and then a reusable banner.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And that is in the contracts that we're putting out. And since Smith's Ferry has begun, I should try to
Right.
get on that. But I have to find out how soon it's going to be finished, because by the time the banner is done. Yeah, I basically had my hands full with
So it could
the
be, I mean, the
contracts
Boys
and-
and Girls Club would be a great place to put one.
Yeah, definitely.
I just think that it's our way of showing that CPA is doing
Yeah.
their work, and these are some of the projects we're
So,
funding.
Right.
so there's two things, right? One, in the contracts, we're requiring the recipients to
Yeah, we do
sign.
have it in
And
there.
you're suggesting, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I understand what
I'm
you're
not
suggesting.
suggesting that.
That, well,
There's already
we've already requiring them to
Okay.
do that.
Okay.
But are you suggesting that we do something funded here?
Well, that is already in our contracts, that we are going to be providing what she's saying, reusable banners for the ones that make sense to have them, so that while the work's going on,
Right, well,
They can
there's
hang
some
it
acknowledgement, and
And
that
we
is
can
already in.
reuse those.
Yeah,
the difference between what you were saying and the other one is that once the project is complete.
Oh, that
they'll
would be
put
up to
like
them.
a
Permanent.
Plaque
a
or
little
whatever,
plaque
right,
or
yeah.
something
Oh,
that
right.
stays CPA, whatever.
I want to see
So-
something.
Well,
on-
okay,
So
so,
I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same thing. So yes, there will be, every recipient's required to put,
I mean, where it makes sense, I mean,
Yeah,
with
I mean,
the annex lanterns,
yeah,
it
of
may not
course,
make
right,
sense.
I mean,
Right,
even
but-
with the annex lanterns, you could, like, around the city when you go, like, there's these little things that come out of the ground, and there's like a little plaque on it that just says a little bit of history of the little plant or a tree that's there.
Right,
You could
right.
probably do something similar to
that's
that, just so that it's still there and they can be consistent with everyone else.
That's true.
Like, just
I
for,
want to see a banner on the outside.
so
of
like,
City
this,
Hall.
so like this
City
right here,
Hall
right?
That says restoration of stained glass windows
So-
by CPA.
So like
in the
this right
ballroom.
here, right?
absolutely.
The ballroom.
This right here, there could
Picture of
be,
all of us.
Outside.
there could be a plaque
Outside.
right
Yeah,
here.
there should
public.
definitely be one for stained
Oh,
glass
There,
windows.
I
there
would
could be a
assume it would
plaque
be
in
in
the
the
front that
ballroom
people
next
could
to
just
where-
come
Check
up
with
to
the
and
No, it
see.
should be on the
and it
outside
says
of the
it, like-
building.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be on the outside.
Better check with the
So-
mayor. I mean,
so
it's-
just,
Oh, I'll check with the mayor. It'll be up.
so what your question was, is where are we on these banners? How, have we ordered them?
Right.
And-
Are they designed?
And,
And do
The
we have-
answer is no, because I've had my hands full with
okay.
the
so
contracts
that's
and the
So,
eligibility and all
I know
those
do you-
somebody
things.
that could
But I'm
design.
glad
Do you
you're
need
bringing it
help?
up.
I mean, I could,
I know somebody that could design them
I
like that.
can't, do you?
Yeah, I
If
swear to God.
Then Izzy, maybe you'd be somebody who could
I could do
work
that.
on getting some.
If you can find a
money.
good, a good vendor for that, that would be
Somebody
great.
quick, yeah, and they're
Yeah.
from Holyoke too.
And I can work on the wording or something,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
All I
would-
need is with the wording and what they would need to have, and they'll just, you send me
And
that,
the, and the
I
ones
send it
I've
to them, and
seen
they
are
create
just
something.
your CPA
Right.
dollars at work or something like that. Right.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I would need the logo too, so that she could.
Yeah, I would think we would spell out Community Preservation Act, funded by the Community Preservation
Yeah,
Act.
right.
you
We
know,
want the insignia.
your
too.
dollars.
I
Oh,
know
I'm
Westfield
designing.
says CPA funding at work, Southampton says, look what your dollars are doing. There's all kinds of ways you can say it. So whatever you come up with, I just think that
Yeah,
letting
definitely.
people know that we are actually have some great projects.
Okay, so I'll be in touch with you by email, okay. All right, yeah, the
have
only
something
other
else?
thing I wanted to mention is, as you look at these eligibility applications, keep in mind, I just met with Andrew about the budget, and the amount that we have budgeted for the FY '20 funding is $615,270.20. So just so you know, that's the amount. It's a lot less than the last funding year.
Right.
We had 2 years.
Yeah. The only other thing is I know that now Meg is a member of the committee. Do you want to do the vote on the secretary?
Oh, that's
Oh,
a
yeah.
good point.
Yeah, right, we have to do that, yes. I make a motion that Meg McGrath Smith become our secretary.
Second.
Our committee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Our next meeting, Mr. Chairman?
Welcome.
We need a next meeting, yeah.
And there are a few other things, but I feel like we're all kind of fried, so
Yeah.
maybe we should just hold off.
Yeah, table those. So what is our date for our next meeting?
Oh, well, I think that you usually had it, was it the second,
Second Tuesday, so that would be November,
let's see. Yeah, it was
I
always a
mean, Monday, I'm sorry. That's Veterans Day, the 11th?
Because last time we did it the second Monday, so we only did it a different day this
Yeah,
because of
just
the
because of the
holiday.
holiday.
Okay, so, we've got
Veterans Day is-
Veterans Day.
Yeah, City Hall will be closed.
Oh, we got the same problem.
So
We want to do it the next Monday,
go
the
the following
18th?
Monday again to the 18th?
That would,
That work for everybody?
Because I wouldn't have been able to be here for the 11th, so the 18th It's great for me.
10, 18, 19.
6 PM.
18.
11, 18.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
If I don't make it, it's because my baby's born.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, we won't see you
no,
for
we're-
a while.
We have some serious excuses, not frivolous.
Man, I know, that's a good one.
Man, come on, man. Because you raised two doesn't make it a frivolous excuse, guy. Nah, it's my time now. No, it's fine.
Congratulations.
Well, I hope
Thank
things
you.
go well.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Everybody's happy.
We're
and
working
healthy.
on closing and then having the baby too.
Wow, you've got a,
I just got a message
And I'm
from,
running. So it's like-
yeah,
this is
saw
bad
that.
news. I just got a message from Glenn Sullivan that there's no sound.
There wasn't for about 20 minutes.
Oh,
The city council had the same, has had a few issues with having
Really?
delayed sound. So I don't, that was one question I was gonna have, is if someone could check in with the appropriate person around.
Yeah, they're-
Brian.
They're there, they're both there.
Ryan Allen.
Yeah, they're both there.
Home to my little
Wait, how did you know that the sound wasn't working?
Because she was listening at the same time.
Oh,
Damn, you got people watching?
Hi, Glenn.
thanks,
Okay,
Meg.
bye, Megan,
good
thank
night.
you.
We all set, Mr.
Hey, did we
Chairman?
make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, all in favor, aye,
Aye.
no discussion.
Jern, you must have heard that from